Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone to our Bountiful City Council meeting, Tuesday, June 27th. And we will begin with Esther Harris leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Now we will have a prayer from Ken Redding from the Bountiful Utah Heights Stake.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're so grateful to gather this evening and to gather under the circumstances that we do of such freedom and such liberties. We're grateful for this great nation that we have the privilege of being in and living in, and this beautiful state and this beautiful city that we call home. We're grateful for all that this city provides to us and our families, and many of us have raised our children and grandchildren here and have been so fortunate to realize the bountiful blessings that we are daily receipt of. We're grateful for this city council and this mayor that leads and guides and directs this city. We're grateful for our city officials, our police officers and fire departments that keep us safe and out of harm, emergency response teams. We're grateful for our city employees that make everything so nice for us that we just sometimes don't realize how nice they are. And we're so thankful for them and the long hours. And we're grateful for each of their families and the time that is spent away from their families to provide such blessings to us. Now, as this meeting is going to get started, Father, and there will be many topics that will be discussed, and we ask that a spirit of peace and discussion can take place, that all parties can openly listen and hear, and hearts can be opened, and that as discussion ends, that everyone that walks out these doors can feel so grateful for the liberties and freedoms that we have to express our feelings and beliefs. And once again, we're so grateful and feel so privileged to live here and enjoy the beauty that we enjoy. Now, Father, we love Thee, we love Thy Son, and we're so grateful for the atonement of Jesus Christ. And we say these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you so much for that beautiful prayer. We will now have a public comment period. This is a time for anyone who wishes to speak for 2 minutes. Please state your name and your address.
My name is Ray Nod, 144 Viewcrest Circle, Bountiful. First of all, I'd like to thank the City Council and the Mayor. I think I voted for all of you. I'm friends with at least one of you and have communicated via email with a couple of you. Appreciate all your hard work. The reason I'm here tonight is about the fiber optic internet bond. Having come from the private sector and worked with a lot of budgets over the years, I just don't see how this is something that is a great idea. I know you guys have decided it is. I think it should be taken to the voters. We're talking about over $80 million, a 30-year bond. 30 years ago, they were introducing dial-up internet. Is there some reason we think that this is going to be the solution that 30 years from now that we're going to still be paying off? I don't think so. When you look over the years, we've had dial-up internet, we have DSL, we've had cable, we've had fiber optic, and now we've got Starlink and satellites. I just don't see how we think we can project 30 years into the future to make sure that this is a good decision for the city of Bountiful and the taxpayers to have to worry about. I know I pay $40 a month for my internet. I'm very happy with it. I wouldn't plan on changing, and I know in talking to many of my neighbors, they don't plan on changing either. So I'm just curious as to where this base is going to come from that's going to support this. If this is really something that the citizens of Bountiful feel strongly about and really want, 4 months from now we have an election, let's put it to the voters, and we put things off for 4 months. I don't think that's too much to ask to spend $80-some billion of taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Just as a reminder, for this public comment period, we don't respond because we can't talk about things that aren't noticed, but we are taking notes, and there will be a discussion where we could give perhaps a little background, a little overview of your concerns and speak to it, but we can also follow up with you. Any other public comment tonight? We'd love to hear from anyone who's here. 2 minutes, state your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Paul Child, 69 Viewcrest Circle. I'm just going to echo what Ray has said. I've been in business, having been in a lot of businesses that do things like this. I've been on many boards, worked with many corporate entities, not-for-profit entities. And I think it's a good fiduciary responsibility to always take things of this size to the voters. And I just encourage you to do that. It makes sense. And I can't imagine anything that would be so compelling that would require us to opt in for something now where we could have a vote of the populace and to get their support behind you in just a few months. And I encourage you to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Stephanie Tinky. I live at 49 East, 1300 South. I work for Utah Education Network. I know what a stable internet can do for our community, and I know what happens when there is unstable internet in communities. So I am in very much favor of the bond for the fiber, given that we can have connections up to 400 gigabits now with different types of fiber. I think it is sustainable over many, many years. So that's my take on it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Ron Mortensen. On Facebook, I saw that there was a request for people who had had experience with some of the signature gatherers to come and talk tonight. And actually, I did. A signature gatherer came down my street. And when I talked to him, he was professional. And he and accurate in his explanation. And even though I was already aware of the bond and the infrastructure that was going to be put in, I did my due diligence. And I asked him to let me read what he had on his paper on top. I asked him if he had the supporting documentation for it, and he did, so I read that. And so he had all of that available. So I know there's been talk that people didn't understand it or that they're giving bad information, but in that case, he gave good information. And I can tell you, over the years on the tax referendum, when we were all collecting signatures for the to overturn the sales tax on food that was implemented, or the restoration of that and other things, I collected over 1,000 signatures on that. And I collected about 500 for the flag just this last couple of months. And what happened was, when I find people will come up and they kind of think they know what they do, or they think they hear what they hear, and they go ahead and sign. And they don't read it, they don't do their due diligence, they don't look at the bill that's there, but they do it. And I just had somebody sign tonight, just came in, tracked me over here and said they wanted to sign, there's a new flag initiative. And I asked them 3 questions. Are you registered to vote? Have you signed this before? And do you know what you're signing? And if not, here's everything you can read. And people, interestingly, I'm sorry I'm going over my time, but just interestingly, a lot of people just hear what they want to hear. Some people will think a signature gather comes and they think it's, in this case, Becky Edwards' people or something collecting signatures. and they don't pay any attention. They just go ahead and sign. So there are people, I think, that are confused. There might be disreputable signature gatherers out there, but it's up to the person signing this document to do their due diligence, to read what they're signing before they sign it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak tonight? Okay, thank you very much. Now we will consider approval of minutes of previous meetings held June 13th.
So moved.
Sir,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thanks. Now we will move to council reports, and we'll start with Councilwoman Segura Bar.
I have nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councilman Bell.
I just want to take a personal moment, if I may, and express my gratitude to you, the community. I've had a recent surprise in my health circumstances, and the outpouring has just been remarkable. And I want to thank you and my council members for their support and kindness. And we live in a wonderful community, and there's so much good. And I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Bell, and we are all standing with you. Councilwoman Bradshaw.
Thank you. I don't have a South Davis Recreation District update because we haven't met since our last council meeting, so I don't have an update there. The budget for that organization is still in progress and still, I would say, an issue of concern to share with you. The other update I thought I'd let you know about involves the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Since Gary's term on the board has rotated off, that leaves me as our representative there on the board. And I have signed up to serve on the Land Use and Infrastructure Work Group this summer and the Housing Work Group. Both of those have had their first work group meetings. Land use will be focusing on an issue that came up during the legislative session, the fun acronyms of PIDs, DIDs, and LIDs. So these are all about different ways to form infrastructure districts and whether developers can access them without needing to come to the council for a public vote in order to access the public bond market as they would under a public infrastructure district. That's the PID versus a limited infrastructure district or developer infrastructure district, the DID. So those are still topics that are being discussed that we expect in the 2024 legislative session. The other interesting topic from that work group is a recent state Supreme Court decision involving transportation utility fees. There was a case involving the city of Pleasant Grove. And that is also likely to be the subject of legislation, how cities, the court-cited cities had that authority. The legislative discussion might be scope and reasonableness. And then, we've been through lots of different housing requirements from our state legislature on moderate income housing plans and a number of other changes. And so that work group is looking at what we expect the legislature might want cities to continue to do in the 2024 session regarding housing. So I'll continue to keep you updated as those discussions progress, and if you have feedback that you'd like to be inserted into the work group discussions with the other cities, please let me know.
Thank you for that report. Councilman Higginson.
Nothing this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We will now consider approval of expenditures greater than $1,000 paid June 5th and 12th, 2023.
Move to approve those as printed.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. We'll consider approval of the reappointment of Mr. Alan Bott and the appointment of Ms. Beverly Ward to the Planning Commission for 4-year terms. Mr. Astorga.
Thank you, Mayor. We had 13 applicants for these 2 seats. We do this about every June, where we have 1 or 2 members of the Planning Commission being rotated. We've been extremely pleased with the work from Sharon Spratley, who has sat on the Planning Commission since September of 2012, and Mr. Alan Bott, who's currently serving as vice chair, received only an 18-month term as he was filling a vacancy from another term that wasn't finished. So we, the mayor and I got to take a look at all of the applications, and as indicated on the staff report, the Planning Commission appointments are made by the mayor with the advice and consent of the city council. So as indicated on page 22 of the staff report, we've had the mayor selected Beverly Ward to serve on the Planning Commission and to reappoint Mr. Alan Bott. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. We do recommend that the city council move forward with the appointments. I think a motion is needed, right, Mr. Attorney? Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. We were really pleased with all the applicants, and it's a great community when you have so many people willing to serve and contribute their talents and skills. And I know that these 2 will do a great job for us, so I'm grateful that they would apply. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion that we grant consent to your appointments, but first I want to say publicly in this meeting, thanks to Sharon Spratley that served for quite a good time on that commission and brought a lot of expertise and insight to her service there. So with that recognition, as small as it was, I'd like to grant consent to the reappointment of Alan Bott and the appointment of Beverly Ward to the Planning Commission for 4-year terms.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you so much. I'd like to move to the next item, which is to consider approval of the appointments of Mr. Aaron Arbuckle and Mr. Andrew Hill to the Administrative Committee for 2-year terms. Thank you. Mr. Astorga.
Thank you, Mayor. We've had Mr. Dave Badham, who has been a member of the Administrative Committee for, I think we looked at 16 years. He was, I think, the entire existence of the Administrative Committee, save for 2 years. I think John Mark Knight was a member there. But he's indicated that he feels comfortable with the service that he's provided to the city, coming in those Monday nights. And I think back in the day it was early in the morning on Mondays too. And we appreciated Mr. Badham and also Mr. Scott Schlegel, who's been on the administrative for 3 years now. As they've indicated, Mr. Schlegel does serve on the General Plan Steering Committee, and he also feels comfortable with the service that they provided. On a side note, we did have a small reception for both Mr. Badham, Mr. Schlegel, and Sharon Spratley at Planning Commission last week, where we were able to joke around and thank them for their service. With that said, these appointments are just like the ones for Planning Commission. They're made by the mayor with the advice and consent of City Council. And Aaron Arbuckle and Andrew Hill have been selected to be members of the Administrative Committee. I'll be more than happy to answer any other questions.
Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second that. Can I also make a note, if they're here, I'd love to know who they are. We know.
Andrew's here, if you could. Yeah, there he is.
Okay, wonderful.
I believe Aaron Arbuckle is out of town.
Correct.
Thanks. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Welcome.
One question, Mayor, if I could?
Yes.
Mr. Hill, are you related to Gary Hill?
There is a relation. His father and my grandfather are first cousins.
Awesome. Just wanted to get that out in public. We don't want any backroom dealing here. Thanks for your willingness to serve.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will now discuss the Bountiful Fiber implementation update, and I'll turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Gary Hill.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can refer to me as Mr. Andrew Hill's first cousin twice removed, if you want. I know I learned the difference between second and third cousins, and it has to do with generations. Anyway. Yep. We could do a seminar after. So, thanks to the council and mayor for the opportunity to talk about this. Initially, when we planned to have this fiber update on the agenda, it was to discuss, the proposed beginning of construction. As you may all remember, this process started, and I will do a very brief summary. This process started in 2000 when we had residents begin petitioning the city to help provide better internet services. They were frustrated with the incumbent services that they received. That's about the time we all remember seeing the Fiber for Bountiful signs going up around town. That was, I'm not sure if that was 2020 or 2021. Beginning in fall of 2020, staff and council members started to have conversations with the incumbent providers and asked what their plans were for expansion, if they would share speed maps, if they would share even location maps of where their networks were. We asked if they had, the response we were given was that they wouldn't share that information and that they had no plans or budget to expand further in Bountiful. So at that time, the city council directed staff to begin looking at how the city might partner with other people or consider a uniquely city-owned and operated fiber project. So I believe it was in February of 2021, you asked us to do a request for information to see what options were out there. We issued that in April of 2021. We received information from that met the needs of that from several different providers. We formed a fiber committee that began interviewing people who had submitted, firms who had submitted responses to our request for information. That included all of the many people we've talked about to this point: Strata, Utopia, Google Fiber, CenturyLink submitted a document, but it wasn't really a response to the RFP. It was basically a reiteration of their business plan. A couple of other folks from out of state that applied as well. We did interviews and looked at options of a provider-owned and operated system, what they would propose, a city-owned and operated system, or a city-owned and provider-operated system. One of the ideas where this came from was the UIA, which is a branch of Utopia model where the city, in order to become a UIA city, it would be, the infrastructure would be owned by UIA. The city would be on their network, but at the end of the day, we would still have to pledge our sales tax credit toward their bond. So the city wanted to look at an option where if we were going to pledge the city's credit, we should maybe get something out of it at the end of the day. So in other words, a lease-to-own prospect rather than simply a rental prospect. In August 2021, we shared the results of the survey with the council. We then hired Magellan Consultants to do a feasibility study and a citizen survey. The citizen survey ended up demonstrating some of the need for this in the community. It showed that I believe the number was 70% of the residents, 65% of residents in town, that if all things were equal, being speeds, competitive pricing, that they would prefer a city-owned network than anything else, in part because I think their experience with Bountiful and owning many of our things, such as our power utility, our landfill, et cetera. We then undertook a request for proposals on June 22nd. We issued that, 2022, and received responses again from 2 submitters and a letter from CenturyLink that was not responsive, again reiterating their willingness to continue providing what they were providing. The two responses were from Strata and Utopia. We began an investigation with that with our fiber committee I should say those responses were turned in on December 12th. On January 10th, we shared the results of our analysis with the council, and since that time began negotiations with Utopia to create a city-owned Utopia built and operated fiber system. We began working out financing for that. And on the 23rd of May, the council approved an agreement with Utopia for them to build and operate our system. And then we have been going down the path of beginning the financing process, which is to issue sales tax debt. We recently had our bond rating presentation with with S&Ps. That was earlier this week. We don't know what our credit rating is, although we expect it to not be any lower than our AA+ that we received for our general obligation bond. Very high rating, second highest rating you can receive as a city. So we're very confident and comfortable with the city's ability to get a good financing rate. So we were moving ahead. We had a pre-construction meeting with Utopia this morning that has been planned for several weeks. But of course, over the course of the last week, we became aware that there is an effort to create a petition that would require the sales tax bond to go on the ballot. I'm going to share a presentation here if I can get my... Oh, there, thank you. It's over there. All right, bring this up. No, I think this is good. Okay. So in the state code, there is a provision that says that, and this is specifically relative to revenue bonds, that a city, town, or county shall submit the question to voters if within 30 calendar days after the notice, which was published the day after a meeting we had last month, or earlier this month, a written petition requesting an election and signed by at least 20% of the registered voters in the city, town, or county is filed with the city, town, or county. So this is the provision that the petitioners or the proposed petitioners are using to contest the bond. It's worth pointing out that, and I'm going to skip down a couple of slides, there is a question, does state law require voter approval of sales tax bond? Why or why not? The only bond that requires voter approval is a general obligation bond, and this is a summary of the reasons why, but that is because a general obligation bond pledges the city's full faith and credit and creates a property tax increase. Revenue bonds, including a sales tax bond, do not increase taxes. In fact, we do not have the legal ability to increase our sales taxes. They are stipulated by the state, and so state allows cities to issue bonds like this, revenue bonds, whether that be an electric revenue bond, a sales tax bond. And not only that, we can't even put it on the ballot if we wanted to. The only mechanism for this to go on the ballot would be for a protest in this matter. The reason I point that out is because this is such a regular method of financing improvements that the national bond markets, the state recognize that it is within the authority and the right of an elected body, whether that be a city council or a county council, to determine whether or not they have the capacity to issue sales tax bonds.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Please.
So you just said, Gary, Mr. Hill, that we couldn't put this on the ballot if we wanted to without the mechanism being put in place that is currently signature gathering.
That's correct.
Okay.
There is no path to do that in state law. So that is the process, and that is the process for which it is being petitioned. I've been asked a couple of questions, and then I'm happy to turn the time. I've prepared some information based on some of the questions we've been receiving at the city, but after maybe this, I'm happy to turn it over to the council. I think the big question that we have been asked is who is behind the petition effort? First and foremost, is this Bountiful residents who have organized an effort? And the answer, to the best of our knowledge, is no, it is not Bountiful residents who have organized this. We have learned and understood, and it's been confirmed, that it is the Utah Taxpayers Association who has engaged a petition gathering company to collect signatures to put this on the ballot. They have engaged Gather Utah or Gather Inc. to collect signatures in Bountiful. So that's what we know about who is championing this role. And I think that's significant, that this is not being driven by an angry group of residents.
Can you tell us more about Gather? Do you know anything else about them?
Yeah, a little, but not much. As I mentioned, they are a company whose role is essentially they hire individuals to go and knock on doors and collect signatures for petitions or initiatives or referenda. I think they've been around since 2014 or 2016. I'm going to go down here because I kind of anticipated this question. There is no apparent website or publicly listed phone number. We could not find any way to actually contact them. It's sort of an insider. I guess you have to know somebody who knows them. But there was, and we Googled the owner, one of the owners, Tanner Leatham, who we found through a tax record request. He gets referenced occasionally in Google articles. But we know the three owners, Tanner Leatham, Spencer Stokes, Casey Hill. Spencer Stokes is a lobbyist at the state. Casey Hill is as well. But Casey, incidentally, is also the legislative chair of the Taxpayers Association, at least as recently as 2020. So the company that he works for are members of the Utah Taxpayers Association.
What more do we know about the Utah Taxpayers Association?
Kind of also anticipated that. For anybody who's been following this for the last 3 years or been following the fiber conversation, they'll know that the Utah Taxpayers Association have been vocal critics of Utopia Fiber. President Rusty Cannon has appeared in our meetings and has spoken in opposition to our fiber project considerations. The Taxpayers Association is an organization, as an association of businesses primarily. I think there are individuals that could become members of the Taxpayers Association, but they do not list who their members are. They do not list what their members pay for dues. They don't even list on their website who their board of directors is, which is a little frustrating. The best that we could find was a news release they sent back in 2020 that I've provided a link here to about their most recent, at that time, board of directors. But we do know that Comcast and CenturyLink or Lumen are members or have been members and are or have been sponsors of their recent conferences.
So Gary, I've had several conversations with Mr. Cannon at the Taxpayers Association, and I've been just a little bit frustrated as I've received some inquiries from residents that the people who have someone approach on their doorstep aren't sure who is the entity behind the signature gathering effort. I was glad to see that Ms. Tingy attended. I saw her comments online, and while I have deep respect for Mr. Mortensen, I have in fact always found Ron to be the most thorough of residents. Whenever he reaches out with a concern, it's always detailed. Sometimes it's footnoted. And I know that he has volunteered his time as a resident for many causes, but I think, Ron's experience may be unique and different from somebody who is operating as a paid signature gatherer. So what requirements exist for the Taxpayers Association to disclose that they are the organizing entity behind all of this?
None. It's interesting. I had this petition gatherer come to my house on Thursday. His name was Noah, if I remember right. And I would agree with a portion of Ron's statement. I don't disagree with Ron. What was presented to me was that Bountiful was proposing a sales tax bond, and what do I think it's a good idea to have that on an election? That was the sum total of what was presented to me. So I asked follow-up questions of, well, who are you? And he explained he was with a company named Gather, and I asked him, who are you representing? And he said, I don't know. I'm just an employee of the company Gather. I asked if I could see, I guess I did a good thing, Ron. I asked if I could also see the materials that he had, the petition, the literature behind it. At that point, as I was perusing the information, he then asked me if I was inclined to sign or not, and I said, I don't think I will. And then he said, are you a member of the Bountiful City Council? Because I talked to one of those down the street from you earlier. So apparently it was the same person that spoke with you, Jesse. I don't know if it was the same day or not. And so I don't have any reason to believe that he was dishonest. He certainly was not telling the whole story. There's no legal obligation for him to tell the whole story. I happen to know it, and so that was helpful in my decision-making process.
Gary, I'm just very concerned. I've had outreach from a number of residents who said that the signature gatherers represented that they were with the city, as a quote, that if you want fiber, you have to sign up. And these are all quotes from resident concerns. That resident reported that she was convinced by the signature gatherer that she had to sign it in order to support the Bountiful Fiber Plan. Another person was quoted the signature gatherer saying, so you don't want fiber in Bountiful, and the city is paying me to collect signatures. Another said that they just sign here and I'll fill it in for you. And I find all of those to be greatly concerning, especially when there isn't a disclosure of who the petitioner is and that residents can know about. I find it to be in stark contrast from, quite frankly, the nearly 3 years of public hearings, public reports, public requests for information, public requests for proposals that we've had. And, I think that trade associations have a place. They're a way for organizations to organize and communicate concerns and communicate a point of view. And the Taxpayers Association certainly has a point of view. But I'm concerned that they're not being transparent, and I'm concerned that they are trying to act as a shield for the two incumbent carriers that we have spent a significant amount of time trying to encourage to do capital plans in Bountiful, and that have not been interested in doing so. I sought, because I was curious, what this would cost. And so I sought an estimate of what it would take to gather signatures, and the quote I received was somewhere in the range of between $60,000 and $70,000. And I just find it very interesting that potentially companies who weren't very interested in engaging with us in solving problems for residents want to hide behind an effort to gather signatures where they don't have to say who the organizing entities are. And I want to assure those residents who feel like they didn't have a transparent experience on their doorstep, that we are happy to have a transparent experience and discussion here.
And have for 3 years.
Thank you. I appreciate your cataloging of people's experiences with the signature gathering. I'm concerned, we've spent a lot of time, and staff has spent a lot of time getting to this step, and we were planning to have a groundbreaking ceremony this week and not able to do that because the future is a little bit in limbo. I'm glad to hear that you had a construction meeting this morning, and I don't know how significant that could be, but I could only imagine that this would be a delay. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this might do as far as our timeline goes,
Yeah.
and how we move forward from tonight on, as opposed to what we were looking at maybe 2 weeks ago?
Sure. So I have some thoughts on that, but your question is a little more detailed, and so I may need to add to that. Let me highlight 3 ways in which this affects, that we know of right now, our bountiful fiber efforts. The first is that in our agreement with Utopia, we agreed to secure financing within 90 days. That was the process of issuing the bonds. If the petitioners are successful, we will have to, at a minimum, if Utopia is willing, renegotiate our contract with Utopia. But the next 2 are directly related and the most concerning as far as this project is concerned for me. We were to begin construction in July, if not sooner. If you look at the math, if the petition is successful and then it goes to a vote, the election isn't now until November 21st, I think is the date. And then the canvass wouldn't be until December 15th. We wouldn't know the result of voter, feelings about this until the end of November. Essentially, we will have lost an entire construction season. It'll put the project back at least a year. Directly related to that is the cost of the project. Now, you may remember in my presentation that Utopia did a bid, or they responded to our request for proposals last December. We were in negotiations with them to do, among other things, to be able to collect and keep the money for refreshing our own infrastructure, to be able to own it ourselves, a variety of other things, for the space of nearly 6 months to find an agreement that was in the best interest of Bountiful residents. They held that same construction price for 6 months. Now, I don't know anybody who's doing that. Right now, I suspect the most you could get anybody to hold price for materials is probably 3 weeks, and that depends on the material. So if this is delayed, Utopia has told me that they probably will need to renegotiate the cost of the project to some degree or another. So this may feel like it is a free question to let this go onto the ballot. It is not a free question. It will cost the project more, which nobody wants. So that's kind of the timeline. There are some decisions that we're going to have to make here. I mean, we don't have to make them tonight. We're not asking for direction tonight, but the first is we have to see what happens with the petition gathering process. If enough petitions are collected, then we'll have to decide, do we put a pause on the whole plan, and when? And then when do we look at the agreement? We'll have to go back to the drawing board to a degree with Utopia. And so that's kind of what things look like right now.
Thank you. When I think about when the Bountiful residents first started with this process and put out, we saw Bountiful for Fiber signs popping up all over the city, and people were coming to us with pleas for all options. I mean, this has been years that they've been waiting, and so I know that they were really excited when we, after we had done years of research and we finally decided we were going to move ahead with this project. And so I know that for them, they're thinking they're wishing that this was already underway years ago. And so it really is, I know many residents that are really frustrated that their desire to just be able to have access in their homes, to be able to do school and work online and have the access that they need, the reliability and the speeds. I know that for many, it's frustrating if this will be delayed. It's frustrating to many. So, are there any other questions from the council or any other thoughts?
One, if I could, Mayor.
Sure.
As Councilmember Bradshaw stated, I've had folks reach out to me with some stories of less than ideal approaches from signature gatherers, or who didn't understand the question fully when they signed, and they had questions about what they can do to remove their name from that petition. Gary, do you have information as to what folks can do to remove their names?
Yes, so people can at any time before the petitions are submitted remove their names from the petitions. What I would tell them right now is contact the city or a city representative, member of the city council, and we can work through that process.
Thank you.
They could also, of course, contact the petitioning company if they could find a phone number or a website.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you've done, and we will take this one step at a time, and we will do our best to move forward for Bountiful residents. Any other questions or concerns, please?
If I may, Mayor. I think it's important for those who are just joining the conversation to, if I may just summarize a little bit. One, there was no way for this to go to a vote unless what is currently happening is happening. So there's been a lot of questions. Well, why didn't you just put this to a vote to begin with? That wasn't an option. So I would hope that our residents would understand that. This wasn't done willy-nilly. This is why the process has taken 3 years up to this point, because there wasn't a way to put it on a ballot. That's why we've purposely moved slowly, had many open meetings, many reports and things of that nature. So that's just the first thing I would hope that people would understand, that this wasn't done as a way, the methods used was not done in a sneaky way. It was incredibly transparent. Number two, I think it's important to point out that the Utah Taxpayers Association, although it has a fantastic name, at the end of the day, it is a lobbyist group, which is fine. I think lobbyist groups can do a lot of good. However, in this particular circumstance, I think it's worth to note that two members of this organization are CenturyLink and Comcast, and they have been very vocal against Utopia. And that just you may draw your own conclusions. And the fact that they have gone out of their way to hire paid signature gatherers who do not have to declare who they are, and in whom many ways have not declared who they are, is the complete opposite of transparency and acting in good faith to our residents. The 5 people currently sitting on the dais are your neighbors. We live here in Bountiful. We are so invested in this community, and I apologize for speaking on your behalf, but I feel like that this is okay. We are the ones that live here, and we are the ones who are invested in this community. These big businesses are not. They're not your neighbors. This decision was not made lightly. I guess I'll just leave it at that. I just wanted to point out those things. The conversation is ongoing. all of us are more than happy to answer questions, but I would just caution residents to look at the process up to this point, the last 3 years, all the conversations that have been had, the fact that there wasn't a way to put this on the ballot. This was acting in good faith. And where we are now, the people who are gathering signatures are, in my opinion, have not been above board. And it's been very, very disappointing that they would feel it's appropriate to put our residents in such a situation. So that's all I have to say.
Mayor, I have one additional point and would ask your leave to add it, even though I've already had an opportunity to speak.
Sure.
One of the key points of this plan, the Bountiful Fiber Plan, that is completely unique in the entire state of Utah is the arrangement with Utopia and who gets to hold the refresh fee. The refresh fee is the part of the internet service fee that would pay to upgrade and refresh the network and the various systems going forward. It is what allows for a capital plan at some point in the future when technologies change, when computer systems need to be upgraded. And in 2020, when I had early conversations with neighbors about fiber, I naively thought we could go to the private market and ask for a solution and say, please do a capital plan for Bountiful. I know we're an older city, we're a built-out city, so maybe it's been a while since you thought about upgrading, but we clearly all need the internet now. It's become a utility. Can we do a capital plan? Can you help us increase the speeds, the reliability? There are pockets of Bountiful. My own neighborhood only can receive 15 megabytes max speed, no matter how much you're willing to pay from CenturyLink Lumen. They declined. They weren't interested in doing citywide capital improvements. Those portions of their fees that our residents pay flow to capital projects perhaps in other places, or they flow to their corporate bottom line. And that was a hard-fought negotiating point in our contract with Utopia, that Bountiful would hold the refresh fees. It would sit in our accounts. It would grow. It would accrue, so that when it was time, because technology will change. I grew up with a computer, but it had floppy disks. And then we had hard disks that we still called floppy disks. And now I have an iPhone. Technology will change. And who holds that money to reinvest it in the community so that this community will make sure that we can stay on top of technology for business interests, for education interests, for people's ability to stream entertainment and other things, is really important. And I have gone a full conversion in believing that the private market, seeing a need, seeing people willing to pay for a service, would meet us there. They haven't. They haven't. And so this group went through a very long process, a slow process, much slower than some residents wanted us to go. I have plenty of emails from residents who also thought we were moving at whatever is slower than a turtle. Dithering, I think, was the pace we were suggested. But it was so we could push those negotiation points so that whenever possible, when there was a benefit to accrue in this, it would accrue to the people of Bountiful. And I question whether those that are behind the petition have the interests of the residents of Bountiful at heart, and whether, if they are able to delay and upend or scuttle this plan entirely, where is their capital plan? When will they be doing those upgrades?
If I may just add one more point, there's been a few people that have reached out to me saying, how can you force this on your residents? I like my internet service provider, and no one is forcing this on anyone. If you are perfectly content with what you are paying, with your service, all of that, and again, I'm just saying that this has been said before, but for those who are just joining the conversation or who are listening at home, we are doing our best to make it so the free market is alive and well here in Bountiful. We are not forcing this on anybody. If you like your service, you keep your service. If you want to sign up for this, then you sign up for it. And the people who sign up for it, those are the people who will pay back the bond. So this is not being imposed on anyone in Bountiful. It's only if it's something that you want, and only subscriber fees will be paid toward the bond, no taxes.
Maybe I'll make one more comment. I think the other unique characteristic of our bond or our fiber network is that this will be city-owned. It's owned by us as residents combined. That it's actual infrastructure that is to our benefit over many, many years. And it's unique. I applaud our staff in helping us come to this conclusion that our option that we have with Utopia, where they operate it, they install it, they're tried and proven. They've done this dozens of times, and but it's unique that we get to own it and that they don't. And so I think that we're in a really wonderful situation here, and maybe that's why the big boys are trying to stop this precedence from happening in the future in maybe in other cities. But I'm excited for it, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to continue, maybe just a little slower than we had hoped.
It has been my experience that the only time big business usually interferes in local government is when they anticipate a profit loss, which, that's just me, to quote Councilmember Higginson.
Thanks, Council, for your thoughts and questions and answers. And is there anything else anyone wants to share before we move on?
If a resident wants to sign the petition, they are well within their rights to do so. I would hope they would seek good information before they do so. There are a section of FAQs on the city website. I hope people will look at them. There's a robust public record. Our meetings are all on YouTube. The staff reports are often quite robust. And so you can review all of that material. And if at the end of that due diligence, you feel from a policy perspective, signing the petition is where your heart is at, go for it. But do it with full knowledge. Don't do it with any of the comments that have been made at doorsteps about this is the only way to get fiber, and don't do it thinking that these are city signature gatherers.
Or resident signature gatherers.
Or resident signature gatherers, I would concur with my colleague.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to consider approval of ordinance 2023-04, amending downtown building with standards. Ms. Amber Corbridge.
Good evening. So we've had an application turned in requesting a land use code text amendment to encourage efficient, practical, and compatible downtown land uses and structures. The amendment would potentially allow a mixed-use development downtown, and the proposal would be to amend the maximum building width found in Code 14.7.112C10. The Planning Commission reviewed this on June 6th, 2023, where they determined that the amendment is necessary in the best interest of the public and in harmony with the objectives and purposes of the code. In their review, they found that the proposed amendment would help support newer structures downtown to meet compatibility with the existing historic structures. On page 29, there's a Sanborn map showing the historic development of Bountiful, where structures are close to one another and have differences in facades. And then on page 30, the intent with the amendment is to have structures appear as separate buildings because we want to break up the mass of such structures. So with that, staff recommends that City Council review the proposed amendment and approve the proposed land use code text amendment affecting land use code 14.7.112C10 as shown in the attached proposed ordinance. I'm happy to entertain any questions regarding this request.
I do have a question if I could, Mayor.
Please.
So the 3 lines that start on 27 that are underlined, those are the only changes to the current code?
So are you referencing the ordinance
It
attachment?
starts, during site plan review process,
Okay,
the land use authority may grant a width and length extension. Excuse me, if the proposed building appears, you get where I am. Just on the first staff report page, Amber.
oh, I see.
If I may,
Please.
that is the applicant's proposal.
Yes.
That's
So-
what the applicant proposed to change the code by.
Okay.
That's what you're referring to on the bottom of page 27 and the very, very top of page 28. The staff recommendation, which was what was reviewed by the Planning Commission, is found on page 45 and 46.
A question on page 45, the very bottom on line B, it says stagger building heights every 45 feet or less. I guess we're not suggesting or requiring a certain stagger. There's not a minimum or maximum there apparently. So
Yeah,
they
yes.
can, that's to their discretion.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, the 2 diagrams at the top of page 46 still show the buildings separated into 2 separate buildings. I'm slow. Help me understand how that's a change from what we had before.
It's, if I may,
Please.
it's two buildings side by side. It wasn't intended to show one building being broken up into 5 different buildings. It's just an example of, we're more so looking for the one on the left, where it says one white building. That's the example that we're trying to show the developers.
Thank you. Like I said, I'm slow.
Good question.
Yeah.
Amber, was is the Sanborn map something that the applicant submitted, or is that something that we just had in the city files? I thought that was just a really.
That's something that staff put into the research for this proposal.
If I may, I'll be brief. It was Amber's idea. The Sanborn maps were done for insurance purposes back in the 1900s. And I was very pleased when I saw Amber doing that research to try to get the historic pattern of how Bountiful developed over 100 years ago.
I thought those were very interesting maps. If you've got more of them, I'd love to come
Yeah.
see them at some point.
Yeah.
We've had some outreach from the applicants in advance, and I like what they've submitted here, and I think it will. I'm always very interested in the things that help us achieve the vibrancy we were looking at for Main Street and for downtown. It's an incredibly important part of our community. Those that were at the Bountiful Coats for Kids Rotary Car Show and Burnout Contest this weekend, enjoyed a packed, vibrant downtown, and seeing more of that. Maybe maybe not that packed. I mean, I think they sold out of snow cones and pizza very early, but the things that keep people wanting to visit downtown and keeping it architecturally interesting and maintaining that bountiful flare is I know important to the council, and I think our applicants, as property owners, as residents, have sought to achieve that, but also something that'll not stand in the way of reasonable development. So I'm pleasantly surprised and impressed by the proposal.
Mayor, can I echo one more time?
Please.
I'll echo what Councilmember Bradshaw just said. To me, this is a great balance of the spirit of the original Envision Utah process, where so many folks wanted to have a certain appearance or a certain design or style downtown, and the economy of scale that can be achieved, and amenities that can be added by folks that want to develop with this new plan. I think it's a great thing. So.
May I ask a clarifying question? And I apologize if this was in the report and I missed it, but as far as where the buildings are broken up for aesthetic purposes, is there a limit on how many breaks there are, or is there a requirement on a building this size? So I guess my question is, if we extend this to what is being proposed, is there anything preventing a developer from just making it one facade and not doing the breaks?
So that's what the conditions are for item 10. It says if it exceeds 90 feet
So it's the 90.
wide, then they must break up the exterior facade by following A and B.
Where were you? I apologize.
45, this is in the attached proposed ordinance.
I'm on the wrong page. That's part of the problem.
If I may supplement real quick, this would only apply to multifamily and mixed-use buildings.
Not commercial only.
So that's how the code was originally written back in 2018. We want to follow that same trend or standard, I guess I'll say.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to echo Councilman Higginson's echo of Councilman Bradshaw's motion or thoughts. I was part of the Planning Commission when we first, when this last, what we're changing was made into effect. And at the time, we were worried about having very large buildings downtown that were not scaled appropriately. I like the intent of that. I don't like the unintended consequences that were that affected, and I like this change. It definitely keeps the principles intact while making it more applicable and achievable, especially when we look at different lot sizes that may not have been practical to develop under maybe what the current code is. And if there's no other comments, I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed land use code text amendment affecting land use code 14-7-112 C10 as shown, and yeah, I think that's it.
I'm happy to second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you so much for your work on that, Amber. We'll now move to consider approval of the purchase of 15 transformers. Mr. Alan Johnson.
I slipped my paper away and got lost on the way. I apologize that, but Mayor and Council, it's great to be here tonight to bring this proposal for some transformers. And just as an update, this is the time of year when we typically get ready for summer. we go out into the neighborhoods and we find transformers that have rotted over the winter and have started leaking, and we changed it out. And through the process, we need to update our inventory. We did go out here to try and purchase some transformers. As you can see, we've got 15 of them, and these are the little bit bigger, the physically size the same, they're just a bigger capacity for some of the bigger homes. When we went out there and found it, we actually found that the 15 transformers were in stock that we went. So we basically got a price, and they're a little bit more money than what the low bid was, but you'll notice the low bid was 72 weeks, which would put us into next summer before we'd be replaced. So it would be the Power Commission's staff's recommendation that we approve the higher bid from Annixter Power Solutions for $70,625 for these 15 transformers. We'll note that they were in stock and they have been purchased. In full disclosure, as we said this morning in Power Commission, we did purchase these. Had we not, they would not be there. Like I say, so we actually, I guess I'm asking for forgiveness for these transformers that we did have. Transformers are still really tough to come by. This was tagged onto an order that they had when they went and ordered a full, truckload or whatever, and just an odd that comes in, and you get them from time to time. My purchasing agent's done a really good job of keeping an eye on that to keep our inventory up because of how tough it is to do it. But anyway, it would be the Power Commission staff's recommendation that we approve the purchase from Annixter Power Solutions for $70,625. These transformers will be placed into inventory and be charged out as we use them.
Question if I could?
Sure.
Alan, we just are going to approve 15 transformers. How many have we replaced this spring already?
A little over 30.
Thank you. Did you say that already when I was daydreaming?
No, we talked about it this morning, but
It was this morning. Thank
it
you.
went past me tonight, but I appreciate that. That question was asked this morning. These were the bigger ones we had purchased. The other 15-ish or so were the smaller amount that we still had that we'll be out looking for, so.
I have a question, and I am happy to support, the motion for forgiveness when the time's appropriate. Alan, I'm curious, are we starting to see any signs that the supply market for components to the power department is starting to normalize, or is it still just the wild, wild west in terms of price increases and delivery timelines?
It is more like the wild, wild west. Things were starting to come around, and then there's some of the grants and different items that are coming out, and which means people are starting to spend money and driving the times back out. You will see that if we're willing to wait a year, we could have saved just a little bit. So there is a little bit of moderation coming, but I would say the wild, wild west is still a better way to explain it.
So you still have to gamble on not having windstorms or any other type of outages that would require you to go through what's in the yard in order to be willing to wait over a year.
Absolutely. I mean, in our case, we have the winds that come by in the wintertime. We've got snow plows, people running into us. We have a lot of things that these transformers get affected by. We have to keep our poles up, wire up, because in the past, we could go out to our suppliers and just pick up pretty much what you need, and if they couldn't get it, they could get it in the surrounding area. At this point, there is just nothing. When you go into these suppliers, they have no transformers in the yard. Of what they're coming in, they're just floating right back out. So in this case, we were fortunate that we were able to find some that came in and was able to pick it up before they disappeared to somebody else. So.
Oh, thank you for that update. I'm happy to restate my motion for purchase forgiveness and approve the purchase of the transformers.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much,
it.
Alan. And now the next item, we'll turn the time over to Mr. Brock Hill to consider approval of the purchase of a Ford F-250.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. Appreciate your time tonight. I'll be brief. I bring to you a proposal to purchase a 2023 Ford F-250. This This was actually a streets department truck that was quoted for and budgeted for in the capital equipment budget 3 years ago. That's how messed up the vehicle world is. So I went out with the permission of city administrator to go out and get a quote on an F-150 ahead of our budgeted year truck purchase that should be happening in fiscal year '24. I spoke with Young Automotive this morning. They told me that it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be 9 months. So again, I come to you asking for forgiveness. The truck is sitting in the yard down at the street shop. We had to take it because that's what was available at the time. We are in need of trucks in our department. We have 2 that are on their way out. One is a 1987 Chevy. It's about on its last leg. And then we've got a 1995 Ford F-250 that has reached its lifespan as well. Like I said, this was originally ordered by the streets department. They have since, in those 3 years, gone out and found other trucks that they've purchased. They no longer needed the truck and was kind enough to offer it to us. This has been budgeted for in the fiscal year '24 budget, but with savings from fiscal '23 capital equipment budgets, we have the funds to purchase this truck. With the approval from the city council, we propose that that approval be given. That's our recommendation, and I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Mayor, may I make a comment? Just for those who might not be familiar with our city purchasing ordinance, we joke about forgiveness of purchases, but it is actually in our city purchasing ordinance that if we need to make a purchase in order to save money in an emergency or in a contingency situation like this where delaying it would otherwise cost taxpayer more, I can authorize that expenditure, and then we have an obligation to report to the city council. So I wouldn't want anybody to think that the city council, that the city in doing these purchases in advance when we have to take advantage of a deal between city council meetings is being done outside of city ordinance. It's not, it's consistent. Just for those, I know you all know that, but thought it might not hurt for anybody who doesn't know that to understand.
Thanks for that clarification. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's important to point out too, this is a 3-year truck, right? This truck was ordered 3 years ago. It's now just become available. The 2024 F-150 that has been ordered is unslated. It's not even on the build line yet. They don't know when that will happen. And when I spoke to Young Chevrolet sales representative, the whole market is moving $10,000 to $15,000 in the next design year. So that's where we are. It's not fun knowing that when you ask for pricing that it's not going to be guaranteed and that you have no idea when you're going to get a vehicle. So just to point that out.
That's an interesting point, Brock. So pricing isn't going to be guaranteed on purchases of trucks. I wonder why we would expect purchasing prices on other types of infrastructure the city's considering to hold for an extra 6 months.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of the times when we contact dealers for proposals or for quotes on vehicles, they won't even give them to us anymore because the retail market is so good right now. They don't need to sell on the state contract. So we're fortunate that we're finding a couple dealerships that will still work with us on the government contract side.
Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion. I do want to clarify one thing, though. Brock, you said that a 1987 Chevrolet has reached its life expectancy this year, and that a 1995 Ford has reached its life expectancy. I'm wondering what a Dodge would be in that equation.
We haven't reached one yet.
Okay. Well, with that clarification and understanding.
I think that's because they don't own one.
I'd be happy to make a motion that we approve the purchase of the truck and be grateful for it, for the 48,917.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll turn the time over to Mr. Tyson Beck for our annual fraud risk assessment presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, for your time tonight. Tonight, I bring before you a presentation, and this is a requirement that is stipulated by the Office of the State Auditor. They do ask that every municipality go through and do a fraud risk assessment each year. And just, I know I've presented this before to the council, but for those attending to understand, this has long been a practice of the city of Bountiful. We, as management, we do feel it's very important to assess fraud risk, and in that process of assessing fraud risk, you can then identify internal controls that you can put in place to mitigate those fraud risks. So this has been a long-standing practice of the city of Bountiful and in the management team. So the requirement from the State Auditor's Office is to go through a specific checklist. And on this checklist, they've identified policies and a few procedures that they felt are important. And they then assign a point metrics to each of these different policies and procedures. And then they, in this process, they have 5 different categories of what they deem as very low fraud risk, moderate, or high or very high fraud risk. And depending upon the yes or no questions or answers to these questions, you then are awarded the point structure. So this is definitely a state auditor checklist, and I will point out that every entity is a little bit different, and even in the control environment of one entity is very different than another. So there are different types of internal controls that you can implement that address specific fraud risks. So this is just a very high-level checklist that the State Auditor's Office has put together. So as per the requirement, as management, we've gone through this checklist for our fiscal year 2023, and based off of our responses to the checklist, we scored a 335 points out of 395, which puts us in the low fraud risk category. And again, this is per the requirements of the checklist. As part of the assessment of fraud risk, you have to go through and you assess the fraud risk, you identify specific risks, you create internal controls to prevent or mitigate those fraud risks, and that's part of the overall control environment of the city. And that is something that we definitely take very seriously and make sure that we're monitoring regularly. So the specific checklist items that we did not say yes to were number 4 of our employees and elected officials required to annually commit in writing to abide by a statement of ethical behavior. Then items 8 and 9, where there is, does the entity have a formal internal audit function, and does the entity have a formal audit committee? And with the council will remember that last year we talked about looking into the annual commitment in writing on ethical behavior. We did take this into consideration, and we spent some time thinking about possibly making this more of almost an ethical standard for the city as a whole, and something that we could incorporate more than just a physical signature, maybe something that's more in depth and something that could be held to hold all employees to a higher standard than just something that they're writing on. That does take more time, and so we've not completed that process. And our step in developing a higher ethical standard, and so that is why we've responded no on that category for this year.
So can I just ask, is that a standard that you're looking at developing a policy for personnel, is that right?
Yeah, more like an ethical code. Gary, remind me what terminology we were talking about on that one.
Code of ethics.
Code of ethics, thank you.
You
Yes.
had all the words.
I just needed to know.
So do you have any guess? I'm just hoping that maybe we can have that developed by next year for this review. Do you have any thoughts on time frame of that?
No, it's one of those projects that's in the important but not urgent category. Unfortunately, the urgent and less important ones tend to crop in a little bit, like a subject of what we were talking about earlier. So we would like to develop something by the time we get to here the next year. So sorry, that's not a definitive answer.
Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
No, great questions. So that's item number 4. On to items number 8 and 9. And again, we've discussed this in the past, but with internal controls, you have to weigh the cost-benefit ratio. And if a control costs you more than it benefits you, it's not a good, effective control. So with an internal audit function, with internal audit, you do need to have completely independent employees dedicated to double checking, to monitoring, to going through and performing audits of staff's work. And so the cost benefit ratio has been weighed on that one, and it would be very cost prohibitive to create a full internal audit function at Bountiful City. And to my knowledge, there's no municipality that has a full internal audit function in the state of Utah at this robust level. So we've not felt that the benefit is sufficient to hire that many employees to perform a full internal audit function. Then a formal audit committee. This one, again, is another cost-benefit ratio that we felt does not benefit the city enough to do the expenditure on. So happy to discuss more detail on any of these items that you might have questions on, but that's the fraud risk assessment presentation for this year, where we're in the low category, and we do feel very confident that our control environment is in a good place for the city of Bountiful. And we do have our independent auditors that come in and look at internal controls. They don't do specific audits on our internal controls. That's not the purpose of an audit, but they do evaluate it from a high-level perspective. And we've never had any significant findings that point to internal control deficiencies or weaknesses. So we do feel we have a great control environment, and that this is a good status for Bountiful City.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions about this? Okay, we don't need to make any motion on this. This was a presentation for our benefit to learn about it. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for your work, Tyson. We'll now consider approval of the contract from Hunt Electric, Mr. Lloyd Cheney.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight I have for the council's consideration the contract to replace the existing traffic signal at 200 West and 2600 South. That particular signal has been living on borrowed time for several months, most of a year. And we've put together a set of plans and specs to get that replaced. You can see that we're very fortunate that the low bid from Hunt Electric was very close to the engineer's estimate, and I'll admit that we had a little help from a consultant on developing an engineer's estimate, so that was good help. We have a fairly tight timeline for construction, and that's due to the proximity of this signal to Bolton Elementary and with the additional traffic of kids walking to South Davis Junior High. So getting this wrapped up before school starts this year is going to be a challenge, but that is our goal, to have that new signal in place and functioning. In addition to the cost for Hunt to install and construct many of the components for the signal, we also need to purchase $69,000 worth of poles and arms and other controllers and other equipment for that. That comes through UDOT, and this is all on the state contract for those pieces of equipment. The other improvements that we need to make, such as replacing curb and gutter and sidewalk and constructing the ADA ramps, those will come from the street department's concrete budget. And so we should be in good shape for funding. We just would ask your approval for the contract at the unit prices indicated. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Council?
0.24% is pretty good. So kudos to Lloyd. Happy to make a motion that we approve the purchase, and thanks for being cognizant of the time constraints with school.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll turn the time over to our city attorney, Mr. Drake.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
This is in regards to an amendment to the contract the city council has entered into with our city manager. As is appropriate and necessary from time to time, councils will perform performance evaluations on city managers, and as you are aware, the city council recently had the opportunity to do that and found that Mr. Hill has served and met the council's met or exceeded the council's expectations. As part of that, we're just bringing to the council some terms that were discussed but need to be formalized, and that would be an amendment to the city manager's contract. Briefly, that would mean there would just be an amendment that adds to the severance provision of the contract that he would be able to receive up to a payment of 6 months plus 1 additional month for every additional year of employment with Bountiful City for a maximum of 12 months severance. The other one being that Mr. Hill and a companion may utilize Bountiful Ridge Golf Course free of charge, and that would include a cart. That is the extent of the amendments, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Clint, there was some questions that someone asked online, and could you explain the benefit that all city employees have regarding the golf course?
Yeah, so right now, any Bountiful City employee can use the golf course. It's viewed as a fringe benefit. There's a small fee that's included, basically, that's for tax purposes, but any Bountiful City employee can utilize the Bountiful Ridge Golf Course.
Is that unlimited use?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I need to get up there more often. The one that I bought, you get a punch pass. The one that I bought is dated 2019, and it's still mostly unpunched.
Well, perhaps we can facilitate a time for you to get up there for a course risk
There you
inspection
go.
of some kind.
That sounds good.
Any other questions?
I'm happy to make a motion to approve.
And I'll enthusiastically second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. I'll entertain a motion. Yes,
Could I share one lament before we close?
sure.
My one lament is that should the signature gathering succeed in killing our project, I think the likelihood is that a fiber network will still be built in the city. The only thing those actions will have accomplished is that the citizens will no longer own that fiber network, nor will they be able to benefit from the reduced costs once the network is paid off. That's my lament. And I'd be happy to make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks.